I just wrapped on a project that I'm actually pretty excited about. So I'm going to take you guys through step by step how I was able to pull off everything. This is going to be pretty animation heavy, but we are going to talk about the color grading and the audio and the talking head setup and the design and pre-production and all of that stuff. This project is for a brand new startup called Inflight. They're making this really cool new feedback product where you can send a project to somebody else with a single Inflight link. They can open it up. They can record some feedback and go through your project, send it back to you, and then Inflight will automatically consolidate and organize everything that they said into these nice little key takeaways. They are not sponsoring this video. I'm actually just excited about this project. So we're going to do pre-production first, and for that, we're going to hop into Figma. All right, so for my non-designers here, Figma is just a design tool. I am not well versed in it at all. If you asked me to design anything in it, I probably wouldn't be able to do it without a whole bunch of YouTube tutorials. But I do really like working with Figma for a handoff type workflow like this because you can go through and click on nearly everything depending on how it was designed and then just go to export and hit export. And you can do it in whatever format that you want. You can do the entire frame if you want as a guideline, which I am going to do in a second. I'm used to just verbally talking to somebody, them telling me all their ideas, and then I have to just make everything happen. So adding a design step in the workflow, and then I'm merely acting as an engineer at this point, is so nice. I had Rid go through and design each of these sort of hero frames, and it's just my job to make the animations, to make the raw materials, assemble it all together, and make it look like this. That way he can go through and really worry about the spacing, the text treatment, all of these designy things that us filmmakers aren't really that worried about or don't have the tools to worry about. When we're in DaVinci Resolve in a second, there's no snapping, there's no guidelines, there's no anything like that. So it's really nice to be able to take everything here, everything's spaced out right. I can export the whole thing and use it as a guideline and just drop the opacity on it, overlay everything over it, make sure everything fits perfectly. I'm gonna go through the storyboard really quick so we know what we're dealing with here. So this is from a past video, but we want the talking head to look similar to this. Rid is right here in the middle, pretty evenly lit. We're gonna go for a big light source, a diffused kind of look. It's a pretty open, airy type space that we're gonna be shooting in. So it automatically just kind of looks good. It's my job to just make sure there's enough level on Rid's face so that it looks natural. I don't want it to look sourcey and weird. And the first thing he's going to talk about is how he's interviewed a bunch of different designers, and a common complaint is that good designers share early and often. It's not easy to share early and often because there aren't really great feedback tools out there. So all these logos are going to somehow animate into the frame. Rid has them as a lower third here. I did end up changing this a little bit, but it's going to stay on this talking head. We're not going to do a full screen graphic just yet. We got to get these logos into place. Those logos will leave. Then he's going to talk about how he's used Loom. He's used all the different Figma hacks to try and make a seamless stream of feedback. It hasn't really worked. So our idea for this was to have Rid here shrink into a little bit of a Loom window. I don't know if you guys have ever used Loom before, but Loom is just kind of like you press record, it records your screen and your camera so that you can kind of do feedback, but there's a little bit of extra steps involved, a little bit of clunkiness, and we wanted to show that. So he's going to shrink down into this little Loom bubble, almost like he's now presenting these three concepts, and then we would have it stop. The video would pause and buffer to kind of symbolize the clunkiness of this workflow. And then we have some generic feedback. There's another issue with using a Loom. Either people aren't even going to watch it, or they're going to watch it and just give you something super generic like a thumbs up or looks good to me. And there's not enough room to, if you have a complex thought, you can't really get that thought through with just a comment. So we wanted to show some generic feedback. We wanted it to pause and start buffering to show the clunkiness of that. And then it goes into this mission control kind of animation, a bunch of these windows. So we got Figma, Slack is back here. I think this is linear, and then there's Notion, and then the dot comes up. So we're showing that feedback up until this point involves a lot of tools. There's not just one tool where you present your project, you get feedback, you present your project, you get more feedback. It's like you're designing stuff in Figma, and then you're taking that and you're making a Loom about it. You're putting that Loom in Slack, and then you're putting your notes down in Notion, whatever it is. We just wanted to symbolize that there's a lot of tools being involved here. So right away, I'm thinking that this Slack window, which is where this loom is dropped in, is going to slide up here, go right here. And then these other tools are going to join it. And then we go to a fifth tool, which is the calendar, because Rid's making this point about how it's not efficient for the complex thoughts, the complex feedback to get pushed off to design review. I guess a lot of companies do this where there's sort of like a design review at the end of the week. Everybody works all week and then everybody sits down and you talk about what needs to be changed. Now that you're face to face, you can talk about complex ideas. We wanted to hit this point where it's Tuesday on this calendar. You have a complex thought and you're going to have to shelf that complex thought until a couple days later when you hit design review on Friday. Not super efficient. You're losing all these days when you could get feedback right now and then start working on your design. And then maybe by design review, you've gone through 3 different iterations. So I really like this idea here. So then we're going to go back to the talking head. He's going to keep talking about async feedback and time to alignment being a competitive edge. And then this is where Inflight is sort of introduced. One of the cool things about Inflight is that when you're recording your feedback, it records your camera, but it puts you sort of embedded in the cursor like this. So you're still looking at the person, but the person's flying around showing you things on your product or your project. So he's going to shrink down again. This time it's going to be a cursor. And then we have sort of this mobile screen here. That's meant to be a project. It's to symbolize someone's project here. It's going to slide into frame. And then we have 2 other people who are kind of like people giving feedback. So that's going to slide over and go to the insights page, which is when Inflight consolidates and organizes all of the feedback, because some of these people might be giving feedback with videos that are like 25 minutes long. And maybe if you don't have time to read it, or if you really just need the cliff notes, Inflight's going to tell you, oh yeah, the review is preferred concept 2. Olivia had an idea to simplify the layout. It's just going to give you a bunch of different insights that then if you want to explore that further, you can click on it and go to the timestamp part where they're talking about that. You can click on a highlight, like I said, and it'll show you the timestamped video of when she's actually saying that. Kind of wanted a progress bar right here. And her cursor would be in here showing her idea to simplify the layout. Super cool. We go into this next kind of high level thing where Rid is hitting the line. Either way, we believe it's time for a new modern feedback flow where it's this initial idea, design direction, internal prototype, beta testing, shipped feature. It's the Inflight logo is right here. You got these 2 pointers. I wanted one pointer to fly through this curve here, sort of shoot off the top. Here it is right here. And then this other pointer will enter from the right of the frame. Both of them will ease to a stop, and you have your Inflight logo. That's pre-production. So like I said, what's nice is I can go through here and work backwards from these frames. I can export this whole thing and then create the animation from here. Time to jump into Resolve. Okay, so this is DaVinci Resolve. It is a common video editor. It also does a ton of animation. It does a ton of audio work. If you ask me, and it seems like most filmmakers, it is way better than Adobe's Creative Suite. And also, you don't have to pay monthly. Maybe that's a discussion for another time. But we're going to hop into this talking head really quick. So my key light is a Nanlite FS 300B set to 5600 Kelvin and at 100%. I exposed for the windows outside first and then went to put the level on Rid's face, and it turns out 100% was what got me there. I wish I had like a 600 watt light for something like this, but got to make do with what we had. I only had 2 lights available to me. So we fired that light down. I put my C-stand as high as it would go, and then I modified it through an aperture light dome. I kept the grid off so it would look a little bit more open. I didn't want it to look sourcey. And then I put another light back here. You can just about see the light stand poking through right there. It's just off screen. And that one is doing this little kicker right here. Not quite a hair light, but I would call it a kicker, just coming through here on the side. That is unmodified, or rather it was through a reflector to put the beam in a little bit tighter. I think that was an old Godox 60 watt light that was also permanently set to 5600 Kelvin because it's not bicolor. So really simple lighting setup. If I had way more lights, way more wattage to work with, would have maybe done some gobo work up here. This is a little dark up here. I would have liked to paint a little bit more light on there. If I had a 600 or 1200, I would have done a book light instead of just a light dome on Rid, but all things considered, I think it looks pretty good. We shot this with my Blackmagic Design Ursa Broadcast G2, which is my main camera of choice. I'm shooting with it right now. And the lens was a an old Leica R28mm, set up the composition, then set up the lights. I have a Sennheiser MKE 600 just off frame. I was just holding it on a boom pole. And I think that's mainly all of the technical stuff on the setup. As for color grading, it is really straightforward. If you guys have watched my channel before, this is how I grade everything. I have a power grade that I like to call the sauce, that it just has all my standard presets in it. All we're doing is doing a color space transform to get us from Blackmagic Film Gen 5, which is what it was filmed in. This is what it would look like right out of camera. Actually, you know what we're going to do? We're going to turn everything off and go step by step. So we are converting it from Blackmagic Film to DaVinci Wide Gamut. That's the color space that I work in. It's the color space that my timeline is set to. It's just a nice wide color space to give us plenty of room to work in. Then I have another CST that's taking us from Wide Gamut to Rec 709. I always do a little bit of texture work, and in this case, that means just softening it up a little bit. This was shot in Blackmagic RAW 12:1, 250 ISO, 5600 Kelvin, which is quite a sharp and detailed codec. I like to soften it up just a little bit. We only did 0.52, so a little bit of softness, brought the exposure up, and then did a little bit of contrast work. Chances are I did that in that reverse order. I probably did contrast work first and then fed that contrast node a little bit more exposure. Balance the color just a little bit. It looks like it's, if you look at the vector scope down here, it looks like it's skewing a little bit towards green, yellow. Just pulled it back a little bit. And then I have a formula for film look and density. Smooths it out, makes it look a little bit more healthy. Mutes the greens down a little bit. It makes the skin tones pop a bit more. Really happy with how that looks. I think I kept film grain off on this one. I wanted it to look a little bit more clean and natural. If we go back to Figma, our first animation are all of these brands, all these logos. We need them to animate onto the frame somehow. So what I ended up doing, oh, and by the way that I set up compositions here would be to grab my blade tool, and then I would cut a section. Let's say we want an animation from here to here. Or just cut that section out. And then I would hold Option, which is duplicate, pull it up, make that top one a fusion comp. And that way I always have the video file underneath everything in case I need to go back to it or I need to make another comp on top. It makes it a lot easier than getting really deep into a fusion comp and realizing something is wrong, and then you go back out and you don't have the video file because you just overlaid the fusion comp on top. This first one is just all those logos. What I ended up doing is placing them a little bit more like this. Stuffing all of them into the bottom of the frame wasn't quite working with the animation that I went for. The animation that I went for, here's our first node tree. It's kind of this fly-in thing. Some of them are behind grid. Some of them are coming from front of frame. It felt a little bit more deep, a little bit more 3D, a little bit more interesting. And they're all going to ease to a stop here. By the way, I figured this out on this project, and I wish I would have known about this my whole life. If you right-click, you can uncheck high quality and motion blur. It'll turn off motion blur so that you can actually watch everything in almost real time. The way that I did this is super duper simple. I'm going to get two windows here. This is viewer number 2, viewer number 1. If you want to send something to one of the viewers, you just press 1 or 2. So media out, which is the final, is going to 2. If you ever need to isolate anything, just press 1. So really quick, if you've never worked with nodes before or Fusion, I'm just going to show you how this works really fast. It's pretty scary to look at in the beginning, but it starts to make sense after a while. So this is a black screen. This is a black background right here. Media out is just kind of like your final. Everything exists on this pipeline, and if you want to interrupt your black background on its way to the media out, which is it printing or rendering, or that's the final version or whatever, then all you need to do is interrupt this pipeline. So if you added a node here and you made it red to interrupt it, you need to merge, which creates this foreground green input right here. And then you just drag that. And now our black background is getting interrupted by a red background. And then you can modify it from there. If you want it to become smaller, then you can interrupt the background and its merge node with a transform and maybe make it smaller. What's really cool about this is that you can pipe multiple nodes into other nodes. It ends up being really, really efficient way to work. So your media out, again, is how you're printing, how you're sending everything out. That's your final. And then the media in here is just this chunk of the video that I've turned into a Fusion clip. So it's the video clip. If I were to undo all of this pipe work and send just the media in to the media out, this is just a video. I'm just gonna play through. That's the raw video. All of this graphic work up here just interrupts the video going to media out. It does take a little bit of a mind shift if you're used to working in layers like After Effects or basically anything else. So all of these graphics I've dropped in, these media 3, 4, 5, all these are just referencing these logos. So you would just drop them in like this. And then I'm merging them. So they're showing up in the composition. And then the animation is all just happening on this transform node. So we'll look at, there's ramp. This is what the curve looks like. It's just going from there to there. The way that I did that is actually with only 2 keyframes. I'm just telling it from frame 0 to frame 64. I want you to go from here to here. And then what I've done to achieve this curve is just to click on each of the points in the viewer and then just drag these way out. Otherwise, it would just animate in a straight line. I kind of wanted everything to look a little bit more fluid. And this took a lot of tinkering because at first it looked a little buggy, a little hivey, almost like someone kicked a bee's nest and all of them were just buzzing, flying all over the place. So I had to tone it down. I had a lot of them whipping and doing all this crazy stuff. For some of them, like Perplexity, which one is Perplexity? There's Perplexity. This one is actually just a straight line. See, it's going from here to here, from frame 23 to frame 87. It's just moving from there to there. But there's also an angle and a size animation on it. This is bigger up close to kind of fake that it's moving away. Maybe it's like whizzing by the camera and then easing into a stop. If you've never done easing curves before, they are super fun in Resolve. You click on whatever node you want to work on for the animation. You press on spline. You isolate whatever animation that you want to work on, like this placement. That's just the placement of the asset. I'm going to zoom to fit. And then this is representing, this graph represents the timing. So this is animation keyframe 1 and then keyframe 2. It would be perfectly linear. You would just have it go and then just stop, which you don't want. That doesn't look natural. You want it to move and then ease to a stop. So I have clicked on this frame. I've hit S, which makes it smooth. And then again, I've just dragged out this handle until this curve looks right. So here's the playhead. It's going to move and then ease to a stop on a curve. And then if you watch Perplexity up here, it does that. It's going to move and then ease to a stop. That's how you get it to look natural. I've also gone into each of these transforms and turned on motion blur, which is off right now in our viewer. But if I turn it on, look at Perplexity. It's going to blur when it's moving fast. Again, it just makes it look more natural. I'm going to turn it off because it is murder on a computer's CPU. Here's the most exciting thing about this shot. All of video work, and perhaps most disciplines, is not, I don't think, about how much you know how to do. It's just how much you know you can figure out. So when I started this animation, I knew I wanted some of them to go behind RID, some of them to go in front of RID. And I don't know how to do rotoscoping at current moment in DaVinci Resolve. I've done it before, but I've forgotten. I don't have that knowledge in my head at current moment, but I know that it's possible. My favorite new way to do it is with the new Magic Mask tool that is absolutely amazing. I duplicated the media in, and then I brought it all the way up here. That's this one. There it is right there. It's the same exact video file, but all of these ones behind will show up behind RID. All the ones in front of this file will show up in front of RID, and then this is kind of just the back plate. In order to do that, we would need to mask out RID so that he's sitting in front of all of these. What I did was drop a magic mask node in here. I went to this first frame, and literally all you do is just paint where you want the mask to be. And then if you want to fine tune, you can set it to minus and then get rid of things. Like for example, I was grabbing this chair into the mask initially. And so I just edited it and said, nope. And then you press track forward and then it just made me this mask. And it's kind of amazing how accurate it is. Here's a couple of other things that I did. When the logos show up, I'm going to turn off both of these nodes. It's a bright background and all of the logos are white. And so to create a little bit more pop, I just animated a simple lens blur and then I darkened the image just a little bit. Pretty subtle. So see right here, it's at 0. Then you go to right here. The shot is a little bit more out of focus and it's a little bit darker. And there you go. That's the first animation. Oh, and really quick, I wanted to talk about Storyblocks because I'm super grateful that they are sponsoring this episode. Anytime I'm working on a project like this and I don't have access to a certain visual or I forgot to get a shot on set, Storyblocks is always the first place that I go. If you're unaware, Storyblocks is an authentic market of stock media made by real artists. I'm talking footage, images, sound effects, templates, basically anything that you can think of. They've recently launched their Restock collection that celebrates the emotion and meaning behind the human experience that generative models just can't replicate. So if you're interested, they have annual and monthly subscriptions with no hidden fees, no weirdness. So if you're interested, you can go to storyblocks.com/Jake Hayden or click the link in the description. Thank you so much to Storyblocks for sponsoring this episode. Second one is all of this loom stuff. The way that I accomplished this shrinking is, again, very simple, but it's going to look a little scary. This is our node tree here. And it looks kind of scary because I am not that great at organization. For anybody watching that's actually really good at Fusion, I know you're very disappointed in me. But this was very iterative. I kind of didn't know how I was going to accomplish anything. I just kept moving. I've gone over to Figma and I've gotten all of these assets. So this is a block right here, the Slack window. And then I've gotten rid of like the loading bar. I've gotten rid of rid here so that I have just this background. And by the way, here's a huge reason why this project was a little bit easier. The background is just this big daddy gradient right here. Huge. This is a gigantic file, and it's this awesome gradient that Rid already made. This green outline right here is this background. To get the gradient to look like it's moving, like it's swimming around, all I've done is made it move slowly up over the course of the entire animation. So I can do whatever I want on top of it, and it looks like the background is moving around. Super cool. All right, so here's Rid, and I just have an ellipse animation, and I'm just animating the width and the height. It's just going to squeeze him in. There's the mask right there. Eases to a stop. I have a drop shadow on it so that it's casting a little bit of a shadow on everything behind it. And then I have a transform that is downstream from the drop shadow and the ellipse so that I can just grab the whole thing and move it all together. Right at this keyframe, it very slowly eases into flying down here, landing right there. And then the reason why there's a time speed right here is because I need it to pause later. Remember, the video is going to start buffering. It's going to go bang and start buffering. So this time speed is telling it to freeze frame on that frame. And then I have an exact replica of everything that I've done here without the freeze frame. And then I'm using a dissolve node. So it's just switching from this tree to this tree because this one right here is permanently freeze framed. This over here is the Slack window. The way I did this is with just this original root file that I got off of Figma. It's going to slide up and it looks great on this background. Over here on the Slack window, I have a blue color background with a tiny little long mask and then a big mask that's just animating from left to right. That's the progress bar. Just looks like this. And that's living behind the tree so that it's all perfectly married together and it moves with the background. This again will stop on the frame where everything starts buffering. This background right here is just probably a black background. And then the opacity is way down to 0. So it's not doing anything. And then whenever the video starts buffering, I have it pop up barely so that the video is kind of like graying out for a second. It's just another thing that sells the idea that this video is buffering. This right here is the loading animation. Again, this is another thing that I just don't know how to do, but looked up a tutorial and was able to do it in like 2 minutes. There's just like a shape tool with a radius on it, and then it just rotates and blah, blah, blah. Not super important. You could probably download one of these anyway. But I did make this animation that again pops up whenever the video starts buffering. Here is our generic little feedback guys. We got one right here. And then this other one, I put myself in. There's your boy. There's the original one. Rid just had a placeholder of Olivia on here twice. So put me in there, simple mask, very easy. Grouped that so it was out of the way. Both of these have drop shadows as well. And then these animations, we'll go back to spline. I was showing you guys this earlier. Instead of easing to a stop up here, I actually had it overshoot the endpoint. So here's where it starts off. This is where it ends. I didn't have it just go up and level off. I actually have it overshoot the last point and come back. Almost like they're floating up, like it's water or something. I'm not really sure why, but it felt right to me that this would react to the way that an object would underwater. So if you pull something up really fast when it's underwater, sometimes it kind of tilts. So it's struggling, overshoots, and then bobs to a stop. I think it looks pretty good. Then everything goes into buffering mode. And now we go into this mission control animation where all these other windows fly up. So now I have a downstream, another placeholder, alpha turned all the way down. But now what this enables us to do is merge everything that we've done and then affect all of it with one singular transform. So this transform is just going to send everything up here. And again, every step of the way, I'm exporting a guide from Figma so that I can nail the placement on everything. And then I exported all these other windows. These are very basic animations. The dock is downstream, but it's the exact same thing. It's just a simple animation. It just pops up and then goes down. All of them, I spent a lot of time on the Bezier curves. That's up here in the spline. I'd say most of this project was me just trying to get the curves just right so they felt natural, checking them, they're not right, and then you go back and you edit through it again and adjust the timing just a little bit. So now we have mission control. Everything pops up. And then I wanted it to slide to the right so that we can get to our calendar animation. So again, I have created another blank placeholder, merge, and that will allow us to affect everything that is upstream from that. So not only all these mission control windows that we've done, but all of these other animations that happened in Slack, it'll stay exactly where it needs to go. And then this guy just throws us off to the right, almost like we're swiping. And then we have another window. This is just the same exact thing. It's just a basic calendar window. The only difference is I isolated this little design review guy. So it actually slides over and it doesn't have that at all. And then I have the design review guy just kind of pop up. Another animation where it overshoots, I think. It kind of bobs up and then eases into place. The way I got it to shine, it's very easy. It's just to get a color correction node. All I did was make it a little bit brighter. And then I have just a mask. This is what it looks like. And that mask just goes from top to bottom. Looks like a little bit of a shine going across it. Kind of fun. And then we animate out of that. That's the end of it. That's what this polyline is. I drew just a huge weird shape. That mask will just fly down. The reason why I had it not just move left to right is that so most of the curves would get revealed as it goes through. It looks like it's swimming or that it's a little bit more alive than just like a cookie cutter flying across. Lots of soft edge on here. And that's the end of that next Fusion comp. And this is the benefit of, again, having the original video file living below so that you can do transitions like this and it will reveal the video file underneath. So now we're in talking head for a little bit. So here's a fun note, these little text files. This is leftover documentation from when I just set up the video file, and to make sure that the timing was right, I just blocked out where all the visuals are popping up with just a text file so that I know that, hey, insights are right here, and then we need to get to the arrow path, and then right at this frame, we need to get to the arrow flying off the screen, and then this is resolving into the Inflight logo. Super easy way to make sure that the timing is right before you get way into the weeds. This one is very similar to the first one. It looks a little scarier. So again, we just have a background. We have our gradient file moving super duper slowly to give us a background to put everything on. Here's our rid video file right here. This has the exact same ellipse animation. Closes it in. And then the transform throws it up into the top. And then right above it is this little cursor that we want to fly in. The reason why it is behind it is because we want it to fly in behind rid. See how it goes behind him? No masking work done there. It's just a matter of where things are placed. That's just this with a curved transform on it. And then I just went frame by frame to make sure that the aspect was right, or not the aspect, the angle. Make sure the rotation is right so that it flies in. So he'll move off to the side, and then we have two people giving feedback. These are done the exact same way, except thankfully the arrow doesn't need to animate in, so these are just permanently attached to these comps. This is me and my wife. And the way that I got them to naturally move like a mouse, because one of my hugest pet peeves is when you're watching a movie and someone's doing some research or something and the mouse moves very much like, you know, somebody animated it by hand and it's just like very unnatural. Human hands are super shaky when they're using a mouse. What I did was take a screen recording of me performing these exact movements with my mouse, and then I took a tracker and put the tracker on my mouse and then exported that track data. Here's the trackers right here. Went to operation, I did match move, I published the data, and then I can go in here to these transforms and I can parent them to that data. And then these transforms are just throwing the cursors up into the screen. You can see it right here. There's 0.1 and 0.2. So it's going to take her cursor, it's going to send it up, and then ease to a stop. And then from there on out, my mouse animation takes over. So they kind of like wiggle around like someone's actually using a trackpad. Just like we did last time, then everything is being thrown over to the side by a transform node somewhere. It's actually this one. There's everything so far getting thrown over. Everything up here is this insights page, and we wanted the video to pop up. Wow, I need to get better at organizing, don't I? Goodness gracious. There's the page right there. Pretty simple. It's not animating in any way. It just slides over, which is not done because it's animated. It's done because I placed it with this merge. And then whenever this transform node sends everything over, it just kind of reveals it. Almost like we're working in 3D space and I'm working with cameras, but it's kind of cheating. The hard part of this animation was to get the window to pop up. As you can see, let me get rid of the media pool. As you can see, it's almost like somebody clicked on the video, and then you can get to that point when Olive's going through and showing what she thinks about this concept one with her cursor. This was time consuming, but not particularly hard. So I have this isolated sort of video window thing. It was hard to get the drop shadow effect to work on here, so I did it manually, and I sent a black background and then a mask that matched. So now if you look at this, there's a little bit of a shadow here. It's not real. It's just a black background and a mask. Then we have the loading animation, which is a solid kind of grayish background that is modified to look like this with I think it's a rectangle. It's a rectangle, and then I just bumped up the corner radius quite a bit. I placed it exactly where it should go. And then I have a color correction node that is way darkening it. And then I have a mask that just very slowly moves from left to right, is revealing the darker part of it. And then the exact same thing, just a screen capture of me moving my mouse around to make it look natural. Everything gets piped into this merge here so that all of it can respect the transforms. The transforms are moving everything around. If you were to be able to zoom out to this whole thing, I have each of these comps sitting next to each other, and these transforms are just moving like this. And it's kind of hard to do this with one transform node because when you go in to do the Bezier curves, you have a bunch of data. So you're making this one ease into this one, and you're making this one ease into this one, and then your graph is looking crazy. So every time I make a movement, that's one transform. And then if I want the whole frame to move up, I would just add another transform. So that way all I have is 2 points to worry about, and I can really dial in what the curves are looking like. The way that I got this video to pop up like this is also very easy. It's just a transform node. It is really small, and it's getting bigger, but I moved the pivot to the left side. So instead of the video growing like this, it's growing from one side, almost like the person clicked right around here. And then it is blending. So the opacity is 0. And from there to there, it goes to 100%. Super easy. Then we have this other transform that's going to send us up to this graph animation. Now, the way that this graph is moving in, I actually did not do. Rid did this in Jitter already, which is a pretty cool animations product. He already had made this asset where everything kind of fades in. So I just took that and I put it in the composition. This transform sends us up here into it. Then I got my cursor. This is probably the most tedious part of this entire process. Hand animated it on the trail. It's not super difficult, but just getting the timing right and the way it was moving was not super duper fun. But eventually I did get it to where it looks like it's on the track. It kind of flies in, goes along, got the momentum the way I wanted it to look, and then it flies off. We're using a transform node to get us sent over up to here. Moving diagonal now so that it looks like it's following this cursor as it flies off with a bunch of momentum. And then I put a capture of, here we are all the way down here, guys. Look at this. I put this frame as a guideline so I could nail exactly the way the Inflight logo looks. There it is. So all I'm doing is just trying to get everything animated to match this. I'm gonna turn this off so you can see the way that I animated that. Then we have another guy. He's the guy that swoops in. There he is, landing in his correct spot. I have a text node. This text node has some fun modifiers on it with X, Y paths and follower. So all it's doing is just animating from here to here. It is unblurring, or rather right here, it is blurred. It is at 0 opacity and it is down in Y space. And then to here, it is 100% opacity. It's not blurred and it's in the correct spot. And then I put the delay at just about 5 frames. So in between random characters, they will all, instead of all doing it at once, all of those animations happen at different times with that delay. And guys, that's the end. Oh, we need to talk about audio. Here's the thing about this audio project. I'll show you what I normally do. I go over here to Fairlight, which is the audio part of stuff. And I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna maybe EQ it if it needs it. I'm gonna normalize. I always do a 2A compressor. I just think they sound pretty good. I have some, let's see here. Maybe I would do restoration. I really like Waves Clarity VX Stereo. And I would turn this up to denoise. If that doesn't work, then I would come over here to voice isolation, and Resolve works really well. And then after I get it sounding exactly the way I want it, to check it, I send it over to Adobe's podcast suite. They have a free online site that I can link below where you can upload audio, and then they will use AI to enhance it. And I see if whatever I did was better than what it could come up with. And this is one of those cases when I tinkered with this for a long time. I am not an audio technician by any stretch of the imagination. I am not that great at audio. I'm still learning. I got it to where I thought it sounded pretty good. I put it into Adobe and it got it sounding a little bit better. So the final audio actually is straight out of what I did, sent to Adobe, and then put in right here. And then I just muted the original track. And then down here, I did some sound effect stuff. Every time there's an animation where something moves quickly, I have a little bit of a whoosh. I have a little bit of like a bang sound whenever the video buffers and loom. I think whenever there's a notification, I have little dings. Stuff like that really helps sell the animation. And yeah, that's the entire project. Anyway, that's the end of the video. This is one of those really fun projects where 80% of the things that I did in it are techniques that I don't have top of mind. I had to relearn all of them to do this, and it pushed me in some ways. It was super duper fun, and I hope you guys got something out of it. I appreciate you sitting through this long video, and I'll see you next time.
I've interviewed people at more than 100 of today's top design orgs, and there's one trait that they all have. Designers share early and often. But I've tried every Figma hack you can think of and made more than 1,000 different Loom videos. And the reality is that getting async feedback kind of sucks. It's scattered across tools, you have to hunt people down, and so what happens is if there's anything of substance to discuss, we just wait until Friday's design review. But I don't think that's going to cut it when the whole world is moving at the speed of AI. And so we've spent the last few months obsessing over how async feedback and time to alignment can be a competitive edge, and that is what Inflight is all about. You can kind of think of it like an async crit, or as designer Tom put it, Loom meets granola for product teams. Either way, we believe it's time for a modern feedback flow, and we're excited to share our vision with you today. So if you want to learn more, head to inflight.co.